Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiro Dhanachari Yamuna Tiro Dhanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Paramansa Paribhagavacharya Sattva Smadhati Vedanta Saraswati Swami Prabhupada Jaya Nanda Kori Vaishnava Ki Jaya Ramacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jaya Names of the whole Sri Krishna Sri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Kanda Radha Kanda Ki Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Navadvip Dham Ki Jaya Ganga Maya Ki Jaya Jamuna Maya Ki Jaya Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jaya Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jaya All glories to the All glories to the Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hope you can hear me and see my screen. Hare Krishna. Hope all of you are doing well in all respects. We'll get started with today's discussion. So we started chapter 5 last week. We completed the first two verses of chapter 5, titled Action in Krishna Consciousness. So the chapter begins by Arjuna wanting to have a concluding confirmation, in the sense, so far he has heard two different views, and he wants to make sure that he understood it right. So he begins by asking that, well, first of all, Krishna, you asked me to renounce the work. Then you clarified by saying that I should work in devotion, which is better than simply renouncing. Can you kindly tell me, what is the final conclusion, right? Which of the two is more beneficial? And then Krishna explains that renunciation of work and work in devotion, they are actually both good for liberation. But if you want to choose between the two, the path of active engagement, that is working in devotional service, is better than renunciation of work, because in this perspective, one sees everything in association with Krishna. Because everything that is created comes from Krishna, there should be a relationship with Krishna. The challenge is when we look at things independently of Krishna, and when we try to exploit it or lord it over, that is a problem. But when one is able to relate everything in service to Krishna, then that is definitely better, and that constitutes devotional service. So we'll continue with text number 3. ज्ञेय स नित्य सन्यासी यो न द्वेष्टि न काङ्क्षति निर्द्वन्द्वो हि महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Translation: one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. So here the objective is that one should be free from dualities. So this world is full of dualities. Any aspect that you say, there are pros and cons, or rather there are extremities, heat and cold, happiness, distress, right? So in this way, there are dualities. So similarly, when it comes to the spiritual path, one might be prone to saying, oh, the results of work, they're always troublesome. Trying to get some fruity results, it's troublesome during the endeavor, when one is endeavoring. But even when one gets the results are also enjoying the results are troublesome, right? So one who has studied in detail the nature of the world, they come to the conclusion that this place is full of suffering. For instance, one has to work really hard to achieve the fruits or any wealth or any kind of success. But then when one achieves it, then one has to work hard to maintain it. At the same time, if one is very successful, then they are always worried that it might be stolen or I might be cheated by my friends and relatives. So it's always suspicious even when someone is approaching with genuine affection. One might think, oh, maybe this person wants something from me because I am so successful. So in this way, the person is always full of anxiety. And then when it comes to spending, the person might also be miserly, in the sense that even if one is spending relatively lavishly, he's worried, oh, if I go at this rate, I might, blow up all my wealth. So he's worried about that. So that's why, they think, oh, I want to do some savings, I want to invest. So while spending also, one is full of anxiety. And when one actually loses wealth, either by theft or, sometimes government confiscates wealth because they find some irregularities, or one actually is get cheated by a business partner or a family member, or when one actually suffers losses, or definitely at the time of death, right? So in this way, you see everything, it's troublesome from the beginning to end. The endeavor to gain and enjoy is always troublesome. The one who has studied the nature, they might think and come to the conclusion, well, it's troublesome, so let's renounce, right? So what is happening in this situation is that person is not seeing things. I mean, seeing the person's perspective is actually way much better than an ordinary uh, materialist in this world who even does not have that perspective. So in that sense, this person definitely has more advanced or realization of the reality. But even such a person does not see things in relationship to Krishna. And one might be motivated, well, because this is so troublesome, I should simply reject it, right? But more advanced yogi or a devotee is one who does not hate the fruits of activities, nor one desires. So that is more advanced, because renunciation, tyaga, requires some sort of uh, hatred, in the sense you're dejected from it, because oh, this is so miserable, and then one develops a little hatred. Okay, so I want to give up the path of pravritti marg. The whole thing is so troublesome from beginning to end, which is true, it is troublesome. But that's only a partial realization. But when one sees everything in relationship to Krishna, then it's not troublesome, in the sense that uh, one philosophically understands in everything in relation to Krishna, and I'm meant to serve him. I'll take that trouble, but not for my personal enjoyment. Desire does not desire the fruits of activities for personal enjoyment, but for satisfaction of Krishna. So it's called labor of love. Just like a mother, she undertakes a lot of difficulties in raising the child, right from the moment she gives birth, the entire process, even before the child is delivered. She nourishes the child in her womb with so much trouble, and delivers the child, and that is troublesome. And then she raises the child. So in this material world, the love of a mother for a child is the closest that one can get to a selfless love. So that love is mother is not doing for one's own self. She's not thinking, oh, will the child grow up, whether will he or she take care of me or not, or I want to do this so that he definitely, I am taken care of. The mother has no doesn't expect anything in return. So it's a labor um, out of love. So similarly, a devotee neither hates. So it is troublesome, but one takes that trouble, but not for personal enjoyment. It takes the trouble for Krishna's enjoyment. So in that sense, it is perfect. There's no anxiety. So such a person is actually free from dualities. Why? Because he's not neither hating nor desiring. And in this way, one can overcome the material bondage. Otherwise, because this material bondage comes about because one is entangled in the dualities of likes and dislikes, hatred, desire, all the extremities. So in that sense, one is completely liberated. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that one who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer, because he feels neither hatred nor desire for the results of action. This is real renunciation. The other renunciation is called Falgu Vairagya. Falgu means it's not firmly based, it's false. It's a superficial renunciation, or Falgu Vairagya is when one simply renounces one's duties or work because one says, oh, this is troublesome, so let me not pursue it. But that is not proper renunciation. Such a renouncer dedicated to the transcendental loving service of the Lord is fully qualified in knowledge, because he knows his constitutional position in his relationship with Krishna, which is Jive Shurup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. The constitutional position of the living entity to be always subservient um, to the Lord, to Krishna. But that the to be subservient is not a drudgery. It's not like one an ordinary experience. When one is doing some service, if I'm forced to do it, or no one likes to take a subordinate position. But this is not that kind of service. It's service or out of love. And actually, this world is based on service. If one does not have, one might not like to serve one's employer, for instance, but then one likes to relish or serve their family members. So the nature to serve is always there. Uh, the question is finding out who is the person who is most worthy of receiving our service. Because sometimes we extend service, and because that gives us gratification. But often one is disappointed. Oh, I served him so much, and what did he or she uh, do in return? Right. So one is disappointed. So one is disappointed because we are everyone in this world is imperfect. So whomsoever we offer our services to, we cannot expect perfect reciprocation in this world because everyone is imperfect, just like our own selves. But Krishna, being a perfect person, he reciprocates perfectly. So the nature of the soul is to serve. But right now we have forgotten who deserves our service. So uh, the the position of the living entity is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. He knows fully well that Krishna is the whole and he is the part and parcel of Krishna. Such knowledge is perfect because it is qualitatively and quantitatively correct. What does that mean? So the living entity is qualitatively same as Krishna. Krishna is supreme spirit, and we are fragmental spirit souls. So quality is same. What is the quality? That we are spiritual. Just like a small nugget of gold, whose origin or the source is a gold mine. The gold mine has gold in unlimited quantity or large quantity, right? The gold nugget that I might possess uh, is in minute quantity, but quality is same, right? It's not that because I have a smaller quantity of gold, it is anyway inferior than the gold in the gold mine, right? So once it is processed, it's the same level of purity. So similarly, the when we are spirit souls, so we are spirit souls. So our nature is spirit. It is as spiritual as a supreme spirit, but quantitatively we are minute. And because we are quantitatively minute, in that sense, we are subservient to Krishna, and we are part and parcel of Krishna in that sense. So, here it means when the knowledge is perfect because it's qualitatively and quantitatively correct in the sense that one has the proper understanding that one is qualitatively same as Krishna, but is quantitatively minute. So, he is the whole. The Krishna is the whole and he is the part and parcel of Krishna. So this Krishna is whole, the soul is part and parcel. So that is the proper quantitative understanding of our relationship with Krishna. The concept of oneness with Krishna is incorrect because the part cannot be equal to the whole. So the impersonalists, they think they are quantitatively same as the Lord as well. Because even the Lord appears, the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Rama or Krishna or all these personalities when they come to this earth. But that form is not real. That is their understanding. That is a false understanding. And so they eventually merge back to Brahman. And similarly, we if we follow their exemplary life, then we also can merge into the Brahman and we become. So in that sense, they don't understand that there's a quantitative difference between the Lord and us. And Lord is never fallible. So it's not that Lord assumes Krishna or Rama, they assume some sort of material body when they come to earth, and they are also subject to illusion. That's a false understanding. That is Mayavad. Vad means a philosophy or an idea which is vocalized, and Maya means illusion. So the idea that even Lord comes under illusion when he comes or appears in this world, that's a false understanding. Knowledge that one is one in quality yet different in quantity is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself, having nothing to aspire or to lament over. So here it's clearly mentioned, the proper understanding is that no, there is a quantitative difference between the Lord and ourselves. That is correct transcendental knowledge. And when one has that understanding, it leads one to become full in himself, meaning it's not the fact that we are minute fragmental portions of the Lord is not in any way a defect. We are full in ourselves by assuming that secondary position. So as I said, there is an enjoyment or some pleasure in serving. So when we take a subservient position, that it itself gives a gratification, just like a mother serves the child. And it's always the parents who serve the children more than children serving the parents. The parents, it's not that they lack something or because I'm serving the child or I'm this is a drudgery. Rather, they feel enjoyment. So similarly, in any relationship, of course, there are in friendship, there is equality, right? But in servitorship or parental affection, both one is taking a position of service and serving without expecting in return. Sometimes in friendship, in true friendship, again, you're not expecting anything in return. That is real friendship. But the friends, they naturally want to, reciprocate on an equal level, right? So even in that sense, one is serving, even though there is reciprocation. While one is serving, one is taking a subservient position. So it's not a defect. When one takes the position of service, it's not a defect in any way. One is still becomes full or complete in all respects, right? And it is when the differential is there, just like the process of osmosis. There's a membrane, and there are on the two sides there are two different fluids of different concentration, and the fluid diffuse and they mix with each other, where the fluid in higher, which is higher in concentration, would diffuse its content on the other side through the membrane, where the fluid is in lower concentration. But if the concentration is same, there is no activity, right? The two fluids are in balance. And that is boring in the sense that, if you are to do a science experiment and you want some action, right? Some motion, some change, some chemical reaction, you can see and observe. But if it is static, then there's no activity. So similarly, the perfection that the impersonalists seek, where they say, well, we are equal to the Lord, and that's why we want to merge in the Brahman. And when they merge in the Brahman, what happens? Right? There is no activity. There is no active engagement. Right? So the Brahman is simply effulgence of the Lord, and when the souls who seek impersonal liberation and who achieve that impersonal liberation, they are only merged in that light, but there is no activity. Right? And they are saying, and so they are not full. They don't experience that fullness. And after some time, because of their want or desiring of activity, they again have to come down to this material world They can go up also, but because they don't have higher understanding of the nature or the personality of the Lord, they come back to the material realm where there is an active engagement. So similarly, just like the example of the fluids into different concentrations leads to activity. So activity in this world means exchange of rasas. And for rasas to manifest, one has to be, one is a superior, the other personality assumes a lower position uh, from an external perspective, but both are feeling happiness, both are feeling joy in that service. So there is reciprocation. Just like the Lord who is accepting service doesn't mean that he does not reciprocating. Lord also likes to serve his devotees. So service is there, reciprocation is there. But when one is serving, one takes a lower position. So even when the Lord is serving the devotees, like here, right here in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, who is Rishikesha, who is a master of everybody's senses, has become the chariot driver of Arjuna. So can you imagine that? And chariot driver is a very menial position in the sense, especially, so one has to take orders. Not only that, in the war there is so much commotion and noise. So even if the warrior or the Rathi who is verbally trying to tell, go left, go right, go there, sometimes you cannot listen in the commotion. So what they would do, they would use their leg as sign. So if you might hit on the right side of the waist of Krishna, if Arjuna does that with his leg, then he's giving an indication, go right or go left, or they might have different conventions of communicating. So can you imagine that, Krishna, who is Jagannath, you go and, hit Krishna with your leg. So it's considered an offense. But Krishna is assuming that menial position, uh, or neither is Arjuna insulting him. There is not a question of that. But the Lord likes to serve also, just like devotees like to serve Krishna. Krishna also likes to serve his devotees, though he is the Supreme Lord. So that reciprocation is there. And so it gives full joy. Krishna, even as a child, he would, this would give pleasure to Nanda Maharaj. He would pick up his shoes and put Nanda Maharaj's shoes on his head, and they would bring it to Nanda Maharaj. So, in this way, the devotee has nothing to aspire or lament. So, there is no material desire that one is trying to fulfill. So, there is no material aspiration for personal gratification. And because there is no aspiration, there is no lamentation. So, if one does not get it, no lamentation. So these are two opposite sides, or the two sides of the same coin. They kind of feed into each other. When the aspiration is not fulfilled, that's when lamentation happens. And after lamenting, one aspires again to get it. So these are dualities. So one has to get above the dualities. There is no duality in the mind of a pure devotee, because whatever he does for Krishna. Being thus freed from the platform of dualities, he is liberated even while being in this material world. It's not that one has to wait until one quits one's material body, acquires a spiritual form, as one's original spiritual form in the spiritual world. One does not need to wait. One can experience that freedom from the dualities right in this material world. So, yeah, that's the sum and substance of this particular verse. Any questions on 5.3?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, one question I have is, like, when we are talking to, say, our family members and friends about this fact that there is always sorrow at the end. I mean, happiness is temporary. This this sorrow eventually. I mean, because like you say, this is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So we invariably create a negative sense about this movement. Like, why are you always seeing sadness in everything?
Mm-hmm.
Right? People start to associate that kind of feeling, that why do you have to renounce? Like, why can't you just enjoy when you are here, right? Who knows what's going to happen? So
Right.
even though we know, sometimes you run out of arguments, or you run out of examples that you can give them to make them understand. So how do we deal with such a
Yeah,
situation?
it's a very good point. Practical question. So you're right. One should not unnecessarily try to disturb the situation where one should personally realize, but one should not go and tell to one's wife, oh, this place is miserable. So one should not appear like one is quibbing or always pointing out that, hey, this place is full of suffering, especially for children who are growing up. But we do not necessarily engage or encourage them in sense gratification either. So okay, you go on with your life. We personally understand what the situation is, and we do our duties. But whenever there is opportunity, what happens is, because this place is miserable, eventually, every now and then, someone will experience misery, right? And one is lamenting. You see, your family member is lamenting. Could be children, could be wife, or anyone else. Then we try to console them. Okay, don't feel dejected. uh, this place is full of suffering, so that is the right moment to tell them, right? And so in this way, and it is temporary, so it will go away, but we should arrive, and so how do you overcome? They are, because they are lamenting or suffering. So at the time you can tell that, since this is world of dualities, the way to overcome lamentation or misery is that one should tolerate happiness. So he says we should say that, hey, let's change our attitude. Whenever there is things which are favorable, we should try to, we acknowledge it, we are happy about it, but we should not get super elated or super excited. So if we can balance, or we can learn how to tolerate happiness, then we can learn how to tolerate miseries. And at the time you can give examples like, hey, what Prahlad Maharaj says, that no one in this world is working hard to be miserable. Can you give, everyone is working hard to be happy, right? Can you give an example of someone where says, I'm working hard? Why? Because I want to be miserable. We are working hard to achieve something, to be happy. But still the misery comes. Misery comes on its own accord. Similarly, so Prahlad Maharaj is saying, just like you don't have to work hard to be miserable, similarly, you don't have to work hard to be happy. Just like misery comes on its own, happiness will also comes on its own. Right? So in this way, we can give these examples to at a right moment. Everything has the right moment and opportunity. Yeah, otherwise you're right. Otherwise, when we try to say things out of blue, then there is not much appreciation. It's not a very healthy environment either. But when we see that our friends or family members, they are miserable, they are suffering. So by providing this philosophy at the time, to the extent that they are able to appreciate, slowly some of these concepts could be introduced, and actually you will see, by this understanding, they are able to come out of that moroseness or sadness much faster. So there is a right moment. Like Krishna did not uh, teach Bhagavad Gita until Arjuna was ready. So we have to see when they are ready to receive that philosophy at the right moment. So otherwise, even Bhagavatam says, you go on with the formality of the life. You yourself be fixed in knowledge. If family members, if wife, parent, they say yes, yes, you don't externally you see a yes, or you behave as if you are just like any other person. But internally, you should be self-realized. See, not that one gets affected. So says, yeah, yeah, somebody says, this is how you should do. Like, so we accept it. We don't unnecessarily pick up an argument. I'll find it verse from Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam just, says that one should, do it as a formality, but one should internally be self-realized. One should act on the knowledge of spirit. But what should externally continue with the conventions of this world, what is expected. And so not unnecessarily try to disturb the situation. But whenever there's an opportunity, you can bring that up. And by some, because these philosophical understandings are indeed good, it really helps one to come out of that depressed or morose mood. So when one is going through it, and eventually everyone goes through it, at the time we can present them just to get them out of it. Slowly they will get it. Does that help?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes,
in the
yes,
same
yes.
context, I have a question. Basically, the situation what I face always that, like I always seen that, when there is a salary or there is a, you get extra money, so before that lands into your account or the moment it lands into your account, you already have some extra expenses which comes up. And in a life also, like you get some good news. So I always feel that this good news is temporary, but there is something, maybe it is a momentary, and something else will also follow. And in all the situation, like I'm behaving the same, no difference, but it is always commented by people surrounded by me that you are feeling less. I feel that you know uh, happiness is also temporary, and the set time is also temporary. They will go away. So
Mhm.
but when you actually apply it in your life, likewise this, that you know both are same, but it is not. I mean, people are taking it other way around, and for me it always happens. So how should we deal with that?
You're saying that in people are able to sense, or that you are not so super excited when things are favorable, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes, that's right.
right.
And,
So
and the other way
again,
around also.
yeah, or yet you're not so miserable when things are really miserable. So again, one should not appear dejected. Um, one should at least try to be expressive. So one natural tendency is with devotional service, one develops some sort of renunciation. But when it comes to interaction with the world, we should uh, be expressive. So when we express without really, in the sense that the words and feelings, it's the way you express it is still very powerful. Just like I'll give you an example. Uh, Especially in the Western countries, right? When people, they're very courteous in their talking, right? When they go to, you say, good morning, how was your weekend, right? Or, how you're feeling. And then you would, all the niceties that they express. And, and they almost as if they are putting up, they really don't mean many things. But, when they express it, it still conveys a positive vibe, right? It still conveys a positive vibe, even if that person really doesn't mean it. Mm. But they're very courteous, and when you ask in a very polite way, so it creates an ambience. Just like in the offices, why do they have celebrations in the corporate environment? Hmm. You completed one project. Now, from a company's perspective, or it might not be a big deal, or maybe it's a big deal, or whatever, right? And the people leader, right, could be VP, director, whoever, okay, let's go out, have a celebration, lunch, dinner, we go to out for some team activity, and people, they have fun. Right now, if you think from a leader's perspective, not that the leader is necessarily super excited, because this is just one milestone, there are many other milestones we have to achieve, but they know that by having such activities, it boosts the morale of the team members, and it's very important to celebrate successes. So we have to become a people manager. Not that we personally become so excited, we should be personally at a personal level self-realize, and not be affected by dualities. We should not be super excited, but when it comes to expression, we should still express it. Just like a child is doing something, maybe solve one math problem, he says, right? Now, okay, what's the big deal? You just did one small addition. Uh, But maybe for that person, it's a big deal, right? So if my son comes and he does, and I say, okay, I just ignore whatever, then they feel like, what's wrong with my dad? But it's just simple words. It's, wow, you solved that problem. That's fabulous. That's so amazing. Great work, right? Now, if you see the way I say it as if like, he conquered Mount Everest, right? Do I really feel that it's a great achievement that he conquered Mount Everest? No, right? But by the power of words is so great that it conveys a positive vibe. So we cannot expect everyone, even including our family members, to be as renounced as we are. Over the course of time, as they make spiritual progress, they gain knowledge at their own speed or pace. They might naturally develop. That's all right. But when we are in this world, we have to act within the conventions of this world. And it's not something new that we are proposing. I gave some examples of how things work in corporate world, right? They are doing these things for people to be excited and they feel to be recognized. So it's we want that specific goal. It's very goal oriented, right? It's not that the person who is doing it is himself is super powered up, like, oh, this is great, because just they have the same understanding that we have in spiritual life. They have the same understanding in their business life, or this is just one milestone. It's not we probably have to cross over many other hurdles. We have way more goals to be achieved, so they are not super excited. And they know there will be downturns. So in that sense, a good businessman has the same understanding that we have in spiritual life. But then still they go and relish and they go and celebrate successes, even if though they might be minute, because they understand the importance of such celebration in boosting the morale of the team. So we have to be team leaders similarly at our home. And we have to celebrate those successes and occasions but we should not get affected by it. Just like a lotus flower, which is in water, is surrounded by water, but if you see the petals of a lotus flower, they're almost like waterproof. They don't get wet. So that is the example. Let me see if you can find that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which I think it's in the translation, which I believe it's like 11th canto. What canto was it? Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. It doesn't show up immediately. But that particular verse says that, one should go on with one's activities and interaction with friends and family member as a formality. You don't argue them or challenge them, but at the same time you don't get affected by it. Is that good? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes. Very briefly. Thank you.
I think, Prabhuji, the crux is to not get drawn into a lot of these conversations, because that's where it becomes difficult, because sometimes you have that urge to respond and present your viewpoint, and that's where I think you start, like this happened with me just yesterday. There was a family visiting, and they were talking about how even though they don't eat egg or non-veg or anything, they didn't impose that on their kids, because they did not even talk to them about it. They said, okay, it's up to you whether you want to eat or not. One of them grew up to not eat. The other one really likes to eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where this discussion started. That I think in one of the classes I had heard on YouTube that the tendency these days is like, early we'll say you hit the bullseye, and then you say, okay, you hit the bullseye. Now you hit the arrow wherever, and then you draw a bullseye around it. That's the kind of mentality that we have now, that we try to justify every wrong to be right.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
what was the conversation? Were they expecting that you should also do that for
No,
your son?
no,
Is
they
that
were the context was that we are so broad-minded that we did not impose this, and that's where I did not agree. See, the argument that I brought was, okay, this is one example. You haven't killed a person in your life. Will you say that, okay, your kids should do the same? Will you not tell them that killing someone is not correct? So that's where this discussion started. That whether how much should we talk about these things when we know that what's being discussed is not the right thing. I took an extreme example of saying, okay, you did not kill someone like a human being, but will you not tell your kids that this is not the right thing to do? You will tell. Similarly, we can take the same argument to eating egg or eating non-veg, that this is not the right thing to do, because it is more frequently we go out, people are eating outside. It is more frequent that they might have to eat non-veg when they grow up, especially here in the Western countries. Why do we shy away from discussing this with our kids? And that's what the context was.
Yeah, I mean, if there's somebody brings up conversation like this, I mean, we should not shy away from presenting a counter argument, which you did. And if they're not willing to take, that's all right. It's fine. But at least we should not, be completely silent. And if you're seeing it's going nowhere, you just change the topic and not create friction. But at least, we should make our point, right? We should not shy away from such conversation. Otherwise, the tendency is we eventually we become lax, and maybe we could get affected by it. So we should definitely present, but it's a bogus idea, right? You say you let people do their own choice, but then a child has no knowledge or no basis. Child is not an adult, right? So why do you give any even education to the child? Let child just decide what one wants. Mhm. So yeah, that it's a ridiculous argument. That's why there's a difference between minor and an adult. So one might have a particular worldview, and your world in one's worldview, one thing might be correct, another might be right way to do, another might be wrong way to do. And whatever your worldview is, you're gonna raise your child according to your worldview, right? So even those who are so-called broad-minded, they have their own limits also, where they would not allow certain things for their child to do. Just generically, it's just a different level on the spectrum, and their foundation or the understanding of the reality might be different. But they also have their limits. It's not they're going to allow everything their child to do. Would you allow your child to drink alcohol, right? 5-year-old kid, right? You are so liberal. Well, what's wrong, right? So everyone has so the idea that the child can decide whatever he or she wants to do, that's a ridiculous proposition. So anyway, yeah, we should speak up. We should not shy away from such conversation, because especially again, this is a friend, right? It's not as close as a family member. And especially if they are and sometimes they do purposefully, they know that you are not eating, and then they are saying this purposefully, trying to make a point. So if they are making a point, then we should also make a point, right? So first of all, they should not even bring up the conversation. You should do whatever you want to do. But when they are bringing up, it's obvious that they're trying to instruct you. So then you should not shy away from the conversation. At least you should definitely respond. And then if they are, and you can easily make out if they are really interested in learning or really inquisitive. If not, then once having made the point, you just move on with a different conversation. So I think that's what I would recommend.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Any other questions, comments anyone has? Good questions, good discussion. Okay. Yeah, I'll find that words. I think maybe if I enter more keywords, I might find it.
Yeah, I have one thing. Just want to ask one query that likewise in this particular conversation, when we said that we should make our point very clear. So how it goes it about corporate world, because I mean this week I had an incident that somebody was literally lying, and then I mean I can go away and I mean I can shut the topic, but then I took an initiative and then I made sure that that person is exposed. But I could not have done it in the past, but now I mean I decided that I'll give my 100% to all the work, so I tried to do it, but I spent lot of time doing it, and somehow at the end I felt that whether it is right or wrong, I'm still confused about it. So
So if I understood is right, in this situation, like somebody was not doing his duties properly, and then you wanted to correct
yeah,
that individual, and so you tried correcting that individual, and still there was no improvement, and so you were wondering if that effort was worth or not, right? So I mean, what I would say is, if this person is a peer, then it's a feedback that you're giving to that person. Uh, if this person reports to you, then you are directly responsible for the work that is being delivered by this individual. So in that scenario, you have more vested interest, not for your own sake, but for the sake of the company as well, to make sure this person delivers. And then you might have to drill down into what is it that this person is, uh, what is it that's causing this person to be um, not meeting the expectation. Is it lack of training, lack of understanding of what the expectation is, uh, lack of other things that you can fulfill? And if that is the case, then you make arrangements for those, whatever is being lacked to be fulfilled. Now if it is lack of motivation, then as a people leader, you have to figure out how to motivate this individual. There are different managerial aspects to it. Maybe this person likes more challenging work, or is interested, is motivated by more recognition um, in front of the team members, or want some variety. And so you can stimulate that environment to get this person motivated. But if this person is just outright not interested at all, right? It's not simply a motivation problem. He just wants to fool around. Then you might have to involve HR, and you might have to give some warnings. So before you take any drastic step, but you just make it clear. Well, this is what's happening. My understanding is that it's not lack of motivation or lack of any other resources or training. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can ask for his understanding in validate, and you say if nothing's work out, then I might have to put you on a performance plan where we will monitor your performance in all HR. So you give unofficial warnings, and then see, but ultimately so you'll have to give them benefit of doubt, and you'll have to kind of find some root causes and try to solve for it. But that's the responsibility that has been given to you, and if you are directly responsible for the individual, there's nothing wrong in what you are doing. So progressively you might have to take different steps. And again, you can always, it's not that we are trying to do this out of envy, but it's good for that person to improve also, right? Well, one aspect is, well, company is paying, and so one should expect certain returns from that individual. But beyond that also, you want that person to be successful. And sometimes one has to take drastic steps, and that's all right. Does it reflect the scenario, or does it answer your question?
yeah. I mean, one of the case was that I mean, that particular person wanted, all kind of attention, is what that particular person is doing, and the kind of activities, and also he or she just tried to find faults on everything rather than making the thing progress. Because I mean, ultimate our aim is to for any organization to serve your customer, right? And but if you stop doing that, and if you just try finding out faults of your colleagues and other guys, and you don't do
Oh,
your
yeah.
work, then
So yeah, I see what's happening. So this is a a warmonger kind of a person. There are people like that, want to go in, disrupt things. They want to find faults. So there are articles. There are ways in which you can deal such individuals. I was reading something recently on Harvard Business Review. I'll find that article. I'll forward to you. So different kind of personalities have to be dealt differently. So I think this article was talking nicely. It had some really good tactics of how to deal with people who are always creating trouble. How you isolate them. How you keep away from. You still provide them the environment, and you have to be for them to perform their work. But there are ways in which you can make sure that they don't disturb the company morale and the morale of the team. So I'll remind me. I'll find that article and forward it to you. You can actually, especially if you are in management, you could subscribe to, there are people. There's so much work already done in human resources or management. Places like Harvard Business Review, they're always publishing articles. You can go and search also with keywords, and you will find specific strategies to solve specific problems. But there are tactics in management science. A lot of this again comes from Niti Shastra, but it is Krishna is the source of all knowledge, and different people have to be dealt with different situations. So I read this recently only. I'll find that article and share it with you. So it will be very contextual. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'll and also have to find this quote. So I'll find the quote and share. It looks like it's not showing up. Yeah, I'll find that also. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. Verse number 4. Sankhya yogo prithak bala pravadanti na pandita ekamapi asthita samyag ubayor vindate phalam. Translation: only the ignorant speak of devotional service or karma yoga as being different from the analytical study of the material world, which is Sankhya yoga. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of the both. So externally it might appear that, well, because these two processes are different, one of karma and another of Sankhya or Jnana. But their goal is same, and one can achieve perfection by either of these paths. How is that? Well, Srila Prabhupada explains that in the purport, that the aim of the analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. So Sankhya Yoga is by analytical study, by analysis, by breaking things down. One should find out who soul is. What is the origin of the soul? So you are trying to understand the nature of reality. That is Sankhya Yoga. So the soul of the material world is Vishnu, or the super soul Paramatma, who is manifested in the heart of all living entities and also in every atom. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the super soul. So that is actually devotional service here is Karma Yoga. And understanding the nature of the soul, that is Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. So how do you understand this too? Well, here Srila Prabhupada is saying, well, one process is to find the root of the tree. What is that process? That is Jnana Yoga. So you can compare Jnana Yoga to finding the root of our existence. The other is to water the root. So having found the root of the tree, what is the next step? If you just find it and leave it, and don't provide any water and nutrition to the roots, the plant will wither away. It won't survive. So the confusion that Arjuna has is, well, which one? It's this or that. Is based on because he has really not understood the purpose of these two processes. So Jnana Yoga helps us find out or understand what is our nature. Who is what is our nature, who is Krishna, how we are related to him. But having understood it, we have to act on that understanding. Just like having found out the root of the tree, we have to water the root. It's not simply enough to know that here is the root, we have to water it. So the real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, that is Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two, because the aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not same. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. So it's very simple. The essence of this verse, essentially, it says is that Gyan Yoga is like finding the root of the tree, right? And then Karma Yoga is watering the root of the tree. Both are needed. Suppose you say I'm watering the root, but actually I'm watering the leaves and flowers, because I don't know, I cannot differentiate between the root and the leaves. To give an extreme example, then my watering is useless, right? I mean, maybe some water will eventually fall down and go to the root, but there's no need to water the leaves. You don't directly water the root. But for that, I need to find the root. So if I find the root, but now I'm not watering it, so that also doesn't help, right? But any intelligent person, after finding the root, will obviously want to water it. And in that sense, just finding the root of the tree, because it logically leads to watering the root of the tree, this path will lead to perfection. And similarly, if really one wants to water the root of the tree, one will make effort to find out where it is, right? So there's an interplay between the two, but they are named because one starts with the primary motivation to serve. And here one starts with the initially the intention is to find out the reality. But having find out the reality, one will act on it. And here, because one is interested in acting on a particular path, though one is starting over here, in order to be successful, one will have to do the due diligence to understand how to do it, for whom to do it, right? So in this way, there is no distinction between the two. Actually, one might start at one place, but will eventually be engaging in the other path as well to be able to be successful. Okay. Any other questions? Any questions on this fourth verse? Okay. Moving on. Fifth verse. Yat sankhyayi prapyate sthanam tad yogeraphi gamyate ekam sankhyam cha yogam cha ya pashyati sa pasyati. Translation: one who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study, Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga, and devotional service, Karma Yoga, to be on the same level, see things as they are. So one who is really understood does not see the difference between the two, as I explained in the previous verse. You might start with one path, but then the other is kind of implicitly included in it. We're not explicitly saying about it, but there is an implicit inclusion of the other path. They're all complementary, and actually they are needed. Both are needed. Purport: the real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there is no difference between the conclusions reached by the two processes. By Sankhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the Supreme Spirit whole. Consequently, the spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relationship with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position, right? So, what is the whole idea of doing philosophical research? Is one to understand the reality. What is the reality? Well, spirit soul is the part and parcel of the Supreme and does not belong to the material world. So by doing that analytical study of this material world, this is the conclusion one will come to. So this is the first process. So this is Sankhya. One has to be detached from the matter, because having understood that we are not the matter, then there's no point in engaging with the matter for personal enjoyment. In that sense, we are detached. But that is just one part, right? The other is devotional yoga process. One has to attach. So having detached, right? Now I have to attach to the positive. First, I have to detach from the negative and then attach to the positive. So here, detachment is not detachment in terms of the activities that we do, but detachment of the wrong consciousness. We have to be detached from the consciousness to enjoy matter. And we have to attach to the consciousness to engage matter in the service of Krishna. That is a devotional yoga process. So, if I want to, if there's a child, if I want the child, maybe the child is had too many candies in a day, so and the child is holding on to more. So you want the child to give up the candies, right? So one way to do that is you force the child, threaten the child or force the child or scold the child, hey, drop it, drop it. But it's a very difficult process, and the child is so attached to the candies is not going to leave, right? So just forcing the child to detach from those candies is not easy. But have you seen, those who are experienced in parenting, what they will do? They will bring something else to attract the child's attention. He says, hey, they won't say drop it. They won't say drop the candy. He says, hey, take this, right? Attach yourself to whatever, some sparkly thing, glittery things. They're always attracted by the glitter or something that makes sound. In order to grab that, what will the child do? Will he drop the candies? So our situation is also something similar. The process of simply getting detached from the matter is not an easy process. Most people, it's almost impossible. But when the motivation is to be positively engaged, when you have a positive path that one can pursue, which is relishing, then in order to attach to that positive path, we naturally will become detached from the wrong consciousness, right? So we detach from the matter, the detachment will naturally come through positive engagement. So the renunciation or detachment is of the wrong consciousness, or the consciousness to enjoy, is a natural outcome, a byproduct of the process of devotional service. One need not separately endeavor to cultivate detachment. On the other hand, if one starts with Sankhya, and one comes to the platform of detachment, then one has to then take the logical next step. Okay, I'm detached from the negative. What's the next step? Well, I have to attach to the positive. It might not be obvious every time, but the other process of devotional service is so nice that the detachment comes as a natural byproduct. So factually, both processes are same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. But detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. Because as soon as one is attached to Krishna, The detachment from matter will automatically come. So one who can see things as they are, so one who can see this sees things as they are, right? So Krishna is further making the same clarification. There is no difference between the two paths. Any questions? Verse number 5. Okay. Verse number 6. Sanyasastu mahabaho dukhamaptum ayogatah yogayukto munir brahma nachirena gachati. Translation: merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. So this is talking about, say, a jnani or follower of Sankhya Yoga has understood the reality of the world, one's own position, but then having understood that one does not engage in active devotional service of the Lord, and then one cannot be happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without any delay. Purport: there are two classes of sannyasis or persons in the renounced order of life. So there was a question, I think was the last class, Yashesh or someone was asking about why there is renunciation, and then we talked a little bit about there are two kind of sannyasis. Why do we have sannyas? One is those who are Mayavadi sannyasis or those who renounce without understanding that everything is in relationship to Krishna, as opposed to Vaishnava sannyasis who understand that everything is in relationship to Krishna. So that's what Prabhupada is explaining here. There are two classes of sannyasis. The Mayavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of Sankhya philosophy, but they do not make the next logical transition, having that, okay, having understood the reality, now I should serve the Lord. That is not there. So that's why they get detached from the negative, but they don't attach to the positive. Whereas Vaishnava sannyasis, they are engaged in the study of the Bhagavatam philosophy, which affords the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. Because the Mayavadis, they also read commentary on the Vedanta Sutras, but their commentary is impersonalist commentary. Their interpretation is impersonal. That means they do not come to the conclusion that Lord has a form and a personality, and so we have a relationship with him that of reciprocation, love, and service. So they don't have that idea, and so they don't have the positive engagement. But Vaishnavas, they study Bhagavatam, which is a natural commentary on Vedanta Sutras. Vyasadeva first compiled Vedanta Sutras, and he was not satisfied himself, right? Because they do not directly reveal the name, form, pastimes of the Lord, and so he compiled Bhagavatam as a commentary, the proper understanding of the Vedanta Sutras. And so the Vaishnavas, they are naturally engaged in positive service of the Lord. The Mayavadi sannyasis also study Vedanta Sutras, but they use their own commentary called Sararik Bhashya, written by Adi Sankaracharya. So this is the impersonal understanding of the Vedanta Sutras. The students of Bhagavata school or the Vaishnavas are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord according to Panch Ratrika regulations. So Panch Ratrika again is another compilation by Narada Muni in which this is Narada Panch Ratrika specifically, but there is another Bharadwaj and there are different, but the idea is of positive engagement. And there are different rules and regulations of that engagement. How do you offer bhoga to Krishna? How one does deity worship? And there are many other regulations. But that regulations are mostly that of associated with positive service of the Lord. Therefore, Vaishnava sannyasis have multiple engagements in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Vaishnava sannyasis have nothing to do with material activities, yet they perform various activities in the devotional service to the Lord. So that's why Vaishnavas, they will see even sannyasis, they are doing service in terms of preparing bhoga for the Lord, dressing the deities. They are actively engaged in nourishing and teaching disciples. Of course, Mayavadi also have disciples and teach them, but their practice of spiritual realization doesn't involve worship of the deities or preparing bhoga. All they do is they simply study, or they are engaged in the studies of Sankhya and Vedanta and speculation. So it's all analytical and simply philosophical without active engagement. Mm. There's no kirtan, there's no chanting of the holy names. And so they cannot relish the nectar of chanting the holy names of the Lord. They simply engaged in studies. Because their studies become tedious, which they do, right? They sometimes become tired of the Brahman speculation. It's too much studying, and only studying. And thus they take shelter of Bhagavatam, but without proper understanding. And so because they get bored with just simply philosophy, says, okay, Bhagavatam at least have some pastimes and stories, but they bring their impersonal understanding even to the study of Bhagavatam, and therefore their study of Srimad Bhagavatam also becomes troublesome. So dry speculations and impersonal interpretations by artificial means are all useless for the Mayavadi sannyasis. Because their foundation is not clear, even when they are reading the pastimes of the Lord and the devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam, and they'll say, oh, this incarnation of Vishnu, Vamana, Varaha, is again the supreme Brahman, which was covered by illusion or Maya, and then that's why they assume this temporary illusory form of Vamana or Narsingha or Vamana, right? And so even though they are reading this nectarian pastimes, because their foundational understanding is wrong, they are still won't be able to relish those pastimes because of their imperfect understanding. The Vaishnava sannyasis who are engaged in devotional service are happy in the discharge of their transcendental duties. They have the guarantee of ultimate entrance into the kingdom of God. Right? So if they continue sincerely on their path, then they will eventually achieve the highest perfection of life. The Mayavadi sannyasis fall down from the path of self-realization, again enter into material activities of philanthropic and altruistic nature, which are nothing but material engagements. We talked about this last time. Many times we see in India, as most sannyasis, they have the impersonal understanding of the truth. They think that they will just sit at one place in some cave or in the Himalayas, or just meditate on the Brahman, or just cultivate the knowledge through analytical study. In that path, they because the soul by nature is active, they are not able to maintain that position of just studying all the time, or just sitting in some reclusive place and meditating. That's not possible. So they're detached from the negative, but because of the lack of positive engagement, they fall down from the path of realization. That means they cannot continue just sit at one place and meditate. And what do? Well, then they come to the level of material activities, which might be, even though it might be very altruistic or philanthropic in nature, it's still a material activity because it caters to the body and the mind, which could be opening hospitals or schools, which are or participate in politics with the idea of, again, benefiting people. So it's not that they're outrightly demoniac or anything, but the philanthropy or uplifting the masses through politics is again on a material level. It caters to the body and mind. Of course, that is needed, but that's not the function of a sannyasi. The Kshatriyas are the administrators. They are the one who would be involved in politics, not a sannyasi. And similarly, the Vaishyas, they are responsible to provide for the society by different charity. Charity work is definitely recommended for Vaishyas and Grihasthas. There's important functions in the society that needs to be fulfilled. Teaching the children whatever facilities are needed, or taking care of the body. So there, even in the Vedic civilization, we have Vaidaraj, or people, the expert in medicine. So all the services are needed. But the point is, it's not the job of the sannyasis. The job of the sannyasis is to provide spiritual knowledge and wisdom and upliftment of the society. But because of the lack of positive engagement, though one has started that spiritual path, uh, the one is not positively engaged, and so one has to come back to the material activities, which could be philanthropic or political in nature. Therefore, the conclusion is that those who are engaged in Krishna conscious activities are better situated than sannyasis engaged in simple speculation about what is Brahman, what is not Brahman. Although they too come to Krishna consciousness, but after many births. So if they continue on that path, eventually they will come to the proper understanding if they are sincere. But it's a long, indirect process. By the good fortune, if they come in contact with devotees, then they can easily bypass that long process and directly come to the understanding of the positive nature, name, form, and the pastimes of the Lord. Any questions? Verse number 6. Okay. Maybe one more. Let's see. Okay, verse number 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvanapi na lipyate. Translation: one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Although always working, such a man is never entangled. It's an important point. One who is able to control one's mind and senses, one who is a Goswami. Go means senses, Swami means Lord. One who is the master of one's senses and not a Godas, one is not a servant. Most people, they are all servants of their senses. We are impelled to act by the urges of the mind, of the tongue, urges of the belly, urges of the genitals. When we become subservient to the such urges, we have no control over our mind. So we cannot be pure, or we cannot act purely in devotion. But for those who are able to do it, such people, they are pleasing to everyone. Actually, they are dear to everyone, and everyone is also dear to him, both ways. Because such people, they don't make any distinction. So they don't get disgusted with those who are not practicing devotion. Somebody who is detached with material world, suppose somebody is not positively engaged, like a Vaishnava sannyasi or Vaishnava, even Vaishnava Grihastha for that matter. And they, through Sankhya or through their understanding of the nature of the world, they become dejected to the material world, right? And so they also become dejected towards other living entities who are engaging in sense gratification, because they have understood that sense gratification is disgusting. So now they look with disgust at those who are engaged in sense gratification. And so when they express their disgust or frustration, then the others don't like him, right? Because others are not dear to him, he is not dear to them as well. On the other hand, the Vaishnava has understood the reality of the world, but is positively engaged in the service of the Lord. And he does make distinction that, okay, there's some of them are karmis, some of them are materialist, others are not, but he doesn't have any hatred towards them. And so in ordinary dealings, though one is still personally renounced, he would still go on with the regular, the expected customs and the formalities of this world. So when he's talking with friends or family members, he will go on with the expected way any man would behave. Of course, doesn't make any personal sacrifices, as Prabhu was saying. Doesn't mean with everyone's eating meat, you start eating meat, or any other engagement in other sinful activities of consumption of liquor, alcohol, intoxications. But one maintains distance, and one, will, yes, nice, like that. So you'll continue with the niceties or the expected uh, behavior of social interaction. Does not express outright disgust. He says, I'm not going to talk to you because you are a materialist, or stop associating. I mean, the initial stages, one is very weak or neophyte, where one says, if I'm going to associate with these individuals, I cannot restrain myself. There's a tendency that I will be affected by their association, and I would be, because I'm of weak mind, I will be also forced to indulge in the activities that they indulge. Then in initial stages, maybe it is recommended that one limits one's association with such personalities. But as one makes spiritual progress, and one becomes situated, when one is strong in one's practice, uh, then one is not affected uh, by association with such individuals, because one is only superficially associating. Real association happens when one starts accepting their philosophy of enjoyment. Uh, if one starts really believing what they are saying, and one starts making compromise. But otherwise, just like a lotus in water is not affected by it, similarly, a devotee is properly situated is not affected. And so, that's why you see Narada Muni, he goes and talks to the demigods, and he goes and talks to the demons. He's welcomed by both. Narada, in Indian mythological, what they call mythology, it's not mythology, but Puranic stories. The word mythology is British origin, is misleading. It's not mythology. But basically, in Indian Puranic stories, when they depict Narada, they try to depict him as a kind of a funny character or a comical character, or someone who is not reliable, because he goes to, he goes and talks to the demigods, and he also talks to the demons, and is favorable to them. So you cannot really figure out which side Narada is. But that is an improper understanding. Narada is not comical. He is extremely grave, serious. He is the teacher of even Vyasdev. He is the guru of Vyasa. And almost all the pastimes, actually significant number of pastimes that appear in Bhagavatam, he's a spiritual master of everyone. He is a spiritual master of Priyavrata, Narada, Dhruva. So many examples you see in Srimad Bhagavatam. He's a spiritual master of them. So when Narada goes and talks to the demigods and demons, he's not he's welcomed. The proper way to see is that because he is a spiritually transcendental person, he's dear to everyone, just like this verse is saying over here. And everyone is dear to him. So when Kamsa actually imprisoned Devaki and Vasudev, Narada Muni visits Kamsa, and Kamsa immediately welcomes him. Come, sage, you arrived. And then, Narada Muni gives him advice. And Kamsa accepts his advice, because Narada is is a Devarsi, so he's Deva, but he is equal to everyone. And Narada tells him, "Oh, you made a promise that you're gonna not hurt other childrens of Devaki. Only the eighth child you're worried about, but you don't know how you count eighth. Is the eighth from the beginning or in the end?" So then Kamsa is alerted. Oh, you're right. I should kill all the children. Right. Of course, there's a story why Narada did that. He did that so that Lord appears quickly. And there's another hidden story of, those are the first six child, they were Asuras. And, anyway, they had to, their existence in this world was very transient. And also how they represent the six faults. Anyway, let's not go into all those details right now. The point is that the Vaishnavas, they are dear to everyone. Right. So the same thing we can apply in our life, as I was saying, when we go, when we come to a situation where we are so strong, that we are not affected by externals, and we can go on with the formalities of life. and without getting affected. So we don't really associate. Our association with the non-devotees is superficial. And so in this way, we can be dear to everyone. And by such a man is never entangled. That's what Krishna is saying. So one who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living entity. And every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna. And just like Narada, he saw everyone, demons and demigods, all parts and parcel of Krishna. So he did not make any distinction. Just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree, he knows very well that pouring the water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches. Or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Similarly, by serving Krishna, all the living entities are satisfied because they are all parts and parcels of Krishna. And because they are all parts and parcels of Krishna, a devotee like Narada Muni sees the same spirit soul in everyone. So he does not make any distinction. And in this way, because he is seeing everyone with equal vision, without any hatred, you get similar reciprocation, and everyone, and he is dear to everyone as well. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is servant to all, is very dear to everyone. See, he's serving everyone without distinction. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. And because he is pure in consciousness, the mind is completely controlled. And because the mind is controlled, the senses are controlled. And because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of being deviated from Krishna. So Krishna is Rishikesh, or master of senses. And so when we serve Krishna, Krishna takes direct charge of our senses and our mind. And so our mind and senses, they are spiritualized to the extent that we surrender to Krishna. So the desires of the mind and senses, when they become spiritual, they are not attracted to material enjoyment. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of being deviated from Krishna, nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in the matters other than the service of the Lord. Just like the horses, if they are not controlled by a driver who is acting under the instruction of the passenger, then the horses will run wild. They will run here, there. We won't reach destination. Similarly, senses, which are like the horses, when they are controlled by an intelligence, which is like the driver, and who is following the instruction of the passenger behind. In this case, intelligence is following the instruction of Krishna, who has taken personal charge. Their senses are also controlled. But if intelligence is not acting under the direction of Paramatma, right, then our senses, they will run wild. So he does not like to hear anything except the topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna as a bhoga first. He does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore, his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. See, people, why they talk rubbish, they become nasty, because they are frustrated. And the desires are not fulfilled. But a devotee is always pacified. He does not get disturbed or agitated. There is no question of such a person talking rubbishly or offensively. So why then Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Somebody might ask a counter question. Well, we see Arjuna is wanting to fight. That means he must be agitated. His desires were not fulfilled. Right? Otherwise, why he came up to this stage where he wanted to pick up a fight with his guru, with his grandfather? So Arjuna was only superficially offensive, as explained in the second chapter, because he really didn't want to fight, as we say. That's why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So he was not offensive. He was still very respectful to his teacher, his grandfather. So he's superficially offensive because all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually, as the soul cannot be slain. So this is a commentary of Acharya, how he thinks. So Arjuna is not going to kill them out of personal envy. Spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. So does this encourage violence without discrimination? Because ultimately only the body is getting killed, not the soul. So why not? Does it justify indiscriminate killing? No, it does not. Because again, this body is a medium by which the soul can achieve complete perfection of spiritual realization, especially the human form of life. And so we should not kill the body. So this is the proper understanding of non-violence also, in the sense that we don't kill body not because of some mundane humanistic reason. Just like currently the idea is there should not be any capital punishment because human life is precious, but they don't have proper understanding of why is it precious. They think human life awards the best chance of sense enjoyment. That's why it should not be killed. That is a false understanding. But human life awards the possibility of highest spiritual perfection. That's why it should not be killed unnecessarily. But when there is a real need, when one is misusing the human body to inflict harm on others, right? That person must be checked. So when there is violence needed, it should be rightly applied. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of the work. So we'll pause over here. Are there any questions or comments on this particular verse? Verse number 7. Okay. So thank you, everybody. We'll continue our discussion next week, same time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.